So, light mode is enabled. First review of the night. Team Liquid versus Cloud9. Shout out to any North American fans, especially people in North America who are watching live because it's already 6 p.m. KST. I always love to leave the light up there because chat loves it. Chat loves the light mode. It turns out everyone uses dark mode for everything. As an aside, and I can actually share this aside with the YouTube VOD watchers and also Twitch chat, during Rift Rivals, my Twitter client auto-switched to night mode. Auto-switched. I did not click the button on the final day. And you know what I did? I instantly reverted it because night mode is trash and we live in the light here on the PapaSmithy VOD review stream. If you disagree with me, it's your loss. So, let's jump into some stats here on the NALCS. Cloud9 versus TSM, Cloud9 versus Team Liquid, and we should talk about Cloud9. They're a really interesting team to look at. I say that as a man who has somehow accidentally reviewed Cloud9 every week. Never a cynical choice, whether it's the outward support they get on my Twitter polls or them just happening to have the most interesting game of the week. Somehow, I have watched Cloud9 every week. And I feel like, I got into the YouTube comments and there's some people who are obviously feeling very strongly about C9. Like, I've always had a concept of C9 under Reaper, and it actually hasn't wavered even through multiple different rosters, because the roster that started with Reaper only had this guy in it. And everything else has changed since then. And I actually feel like Cloud9 have always been pretty consistent. People are saying we can't see. I do have it at 200%, but the roster there around Sneaky has changed a lot. You're right in that Cloud9 was trash at Rift Rivals. Like, look, obviously Rift Rivals was not a great showing for them, but it couldn't have expected to be at the end of the day. I always have seen them as a innovative team, a pretty good early game team with cool plans. Like, I feel like Reaper has scouted enemy teams well consistently over the years. Not every week by any means, but I've been always impressed with his scouting. And I think their junglers have always been the most interesting to watch in the LCS. Like, whether from the Meteos days, I thought Meteos was a really interesting jungler to track. Rush, kind of very clear, aggressive player. I thought Contracts was a really interesting player in his 1 year on the roster. And then Svenskeren and Blabber both have their nuance. And, Reaper has played a lot of roles in his time, and they've had a lot of good coaches on the team. They've got Rain over there now. They've always used their jungler as a weapon, sometimes maybe too far. You think of like the Worlds 2017 where Contracts needed to be playing Graves for them to get leads. They had to go super aggro in matchups. And I think Svenskeren, when he's played this season, has been really impressive to watch as well. Not every game, but the good Svenskeren games are always a real treat to watch. I think he's a really smart jungler and flourished on C9 in a way that he couldn't on TSM. So I've always thought of them as this team that can get big wins through the early game. And then mid to late game, they have changed their identity over time. It should be noted. But I feel like I always know kind of what I'm going to get from C9 in the first 20 minutes. And that's why I've always kind of resonated towards watching their games and enjoying them. But the big story this week was bringing in, Licorice out, Kumo in. And I know that when I saw the Licorice news, you just assumed that we wouldn't be reviewing C9 this week because Licorice is kind of their solid gold player. Like, he is their player who, in all facets, seems like a winner. Like, great laner, very smart player, plays the right meta champions, can play different speeds. Seems like a really cool, personable guy when we do hear from him, even though he is, very recently a rookie. Like, he is definitely the player that you look at and you're like, this is NA's top laner. Especially when we're talking about, non-imports. Like, obviously with Impact, he's also super reliable as well. But I would say that Licorice's champion pool is something that he will always have as a plus over Impact's. Like, Impact's having a really good summer, but he can be swingy in performance. This is kind of the the first split where I think Licorice actually has looked very shaky, and his, his comments that were, he tweeted about gave a lot of light into that. Like, because it just didn't feel like Licorice was the raid boss he had proven to be in other seasons. We have actually Piak1204, one of my subs in chat. To be honest, I always thought his wave manipulation's pretty bad. I think, look, he's not a perfect player. I think that's a fair criticism. I've only noticed it once or twice from the reviews I've done, but I haven't focused on his wave manipulation. So maybe that's something I'll be on the lookout for next time. I wouldn't feel as confidently to say that about him as a player. I think it's something that C9 sometimes do really well, but fall out of love a bit with the wave manipulation. But it's a good point to bring up. But he just hasn't fulfilled, like, there's certain players where you have them in your mind that they're this and they'll always be this, and then it takes a lot of reps for that to be challenged. I think of a lot of KT's players, right? Like, oh, it's Smeb. Oh, it's Score. Oh, it's BDD. Oh, it's Prey. Has meant something for, 2 to 5 years, depending on the player, maybe more. And yet, right now, you're like, does it mean that? Is kind of what we're revisiting there. And I wasn't quite there with Licorice, but it was one of those things that I was unsure about, when it comes to specifically his performance this split. But I think he needs his time away to kind of rest up and address his medical side. And to that, I wish him luck. You look at his numbers, and there is some ways to kind of compare his stats over time. I was looking over his kind of summer stats compared to spring stats, for example, because he had a strong spring split. And you're looking at kind of CSD in these stats, and you'll notice they're down, but they're not, markedly down. He had 7.8 CSD before, now he has, so he had 9.4 CSD in spring, now he has 7.8. He's ahead in CS more, it was 75% to 70. I believe there's one stat that changed significantly between, I believe it's XPD. So look, he's not kind of dominating the lane enough to zone people away from creeps, but that doesn't necessarily mean that much in a best of one league in small sample sizes. All we're really saying is that at the end of the day, the eye test has been a bit more indifferent on Licorice, especially on big games, than it would have been in the past. So enter Kumo, who also is Shiro. And, I know very little about this player. I learned a lot about him from the Reddit thread talking about how he was kind of the prized recruit from the 2017 scouting grounds. He's played 2 years in academy. Up to this split, he was the starter. Loves himself some Poppy. The actual most played so far in his career. He was under the ID Shiro during 2018 and then Kumo in 2019. And these are basically stats up to the start of summer because he's been subbed out in summer. And you can see a lot of Poppy. You can see the fact that he plays the meta champions just fine. Not a Cho'Gath player, apparently. Nothing really remarkable about, I guess, the amount of Poppy. And I guess the 4 Riven wins also. Not career undefeated on Riven. 5-1 Riven player. So, I knew very little. So you just assume Licorice out, Kumo in. How can that be a good thing? His stats in general are a little bit more honest than, for example, Licorice, like gone on the 75% ahead in CSD at 15. But it's very possible he needs to play a different role. So you can't judge a player by these stats, but it gives you things to look for from the game. Like, if you look at these stats, you say, okay, he's, mostly just role playing in lane, and then TPing in and making good plays. That's my assumption from this. So I'm going to learn a lot about him. Now, he's on Jace in both the games. Let's have a look. Jace is actually not a common champion for him. No Jace last year when some people were playing it. 1 game of Jace this year, not including his 2 games played on stage. So lane dominant, and just to see a player whose stats don't scream lane dominance, play lane dominance, is something that we could learn from in this particular case. He would have good synergy with Blabber, I'd assume, but would have played some games with Sven at the lower level. So cool to see a player like this come in. And I guess the big takeaway for me is just how many games he's got played in a professional scene. Like, NA Academy is obviously something that professional scene is a bit an inverted commas, but you know, we're still talking about close to 100 games played with a 75% career win rate. I know that Cloud9's Academy team, from memory, they won the Academy World Championship, so they're definitely one of the kind of most successful of the Academy teams, but that's kind of my primer, you know, cards on the table. You guys can see from my VOD reviews that I watch a lot of regions around the world, but NA Academy is usually one step too removed from me to get to, apart from if kind of something super notable has happened there. And we'll see what it means for kind of Cloud9 versus Team Liquid. Pretty indifferent record. They dropped games to Golden Guardians, TSM, 100 Thieves. Like, there was no kind of real indicator that they'd be beating Team Liquid, because Team Liquid were super impressive at Rift Rivals. They had a really strong tournament. I really enjoyed reviewing their victory against G2, where, yes, they were kind of attacked in the early game and needed to come from behind, but the moment they caught G2 a couple of times, they were really good at keeping G2 honest and really pushing through and picking up a victory. So I came in, you know, with the couple of data points that Superstar top laner not playing, and Team Liquid obviously having a great Rift Rivals, and Cloud9 for many reasons, mostly medical, not being able to perform, assuming that this would be a sad return against his old team, or happy return against his old team, I should say, for Jensen, but it didn't go that way. So let's understand why. I have not seen this game, to be clear. We get through the ban phase. So a little notable thing here is that this is patch 9.12, not 9.13 in this patch. You would assume that it would have been 9.13 because we played 9.13 for 2 weeks now in Korea. Last week of LCK into Rift Rivals was 9.13, but it seems like this is locked at 9.12, so guess what? Karma's even more powerful than she was before. There weren't that many huge changes on 9.13 in terms of the meta champion, so it doesn't change that much, but at the end of the day, the Karma, Tahm Kench, and Yuumi. I always think of Nico when I see Yuumi. So weird. 3 champions here. The Karma Yuumi is very standard. The Tahm Kench ban is a coverage ban for Sona Tahm Kench. It seems like at the end of the day, some NA teams in particular are kind of taking the nod from Korea and being like, okay, Sona Tahm is actually really strong, and Sona Taric requires too much work. So just ban Tahm Kench, and that removes safe Tahm Kench lanes and lets us play pick comps, but also removes the strongest Sona lanes. You're kind of getting a 2-for-1 special on that particular case. I'm a strong believer, in particular, that Cloud9 playing carry lanes is their best way to play. Yes, in the past they have defaulted, say, Licorice on tanks last year, for example, but I really like the games they played this season where they play Return to Flex Assassins, and Niski and Licorice are both on champions that can punish in the side lanes. I don't think Cloud9 have ever been a strong team fighting team. That's never, to me, been their bread and butter. It's kind of early game snowball or picks rather than pure 5v5. So given that kind of analysis, Tahm Kench is also the one champion that counters pick comps really well. So makes sense at the end of the day. But it's also a champion they might have considered playing themselves. So because it's banned on red side, Cloud9 banning it against Team Liquid, it seems to be more, let's play around bot lane. Like, this does allow you to make bot lane more accountable, but it means Zyra Khan is up. It means that other strong lanes are up. The Sejuani is conspicuously open, but I wonder if 9-12 Sylas Jungle will be considered by NA. It was obviously a really big pick in Rift Rivals, but 9-13 did see further Sylas buffs, and now actually Korean junglers feel like Sylas is a blocker for Sejuani. And yes, as Chad is pointing out, simple point, Core JJ plus Tahm Kench equals happy times. So Lux support is the really obvious strong pick here. Like, this could just be Sivir Lux versus Zyra Khan if it's in Korea. But first pick wise, Sejuani is sticking out like a really sore thumb. especially on patch 9.12. They actually took their entire time. Definitely a game where the entire time being used is relevant because Team Liquid are suspicious that a very obvious first pick is left open. They're trying to work out where it goes and is. Hello, Kumo. Hello to you. Niski doesn't get a hello for some reason. Only Kumo. So, Cloud9 can respond in many different ways. You'd expect them to take a jungler first round unless Svenskeren has a really different pick or if they want to flex something. So, Lux support is taken, so they're basically saying Lux Sivir, more often than not, will be the AD carry pick taken in the next round. So if they want a first round jungler, they have to take it now, is your thought. And they're just happy to go super normal, lock in the Trundle, into Sejuani. Not always been a reliable pick in Korea, and I actually think I might have overinflated it in this matchup. Like, people are getting better at playing around Trundle Sejuani interactions, and specifically Sejuani having so much damage adding to a kit means that before, Sejuani would start a fight, get aura resist taken, and die, and she would only have been able to do one round of no damage and maybe hit an ult. Now she's actually doing some damage. Usually they're being a bit smarter about not blowing up instantly because of the aftershock and passive interaction. And in general, I think Sejuani has been more robust against the Trundle than we might have first expected. So I actually don't hate the scenario here for Team Liquid. And they get a lot. They get Sejuani, Aatrox. The blind Corki is a surprise to me. I guess thinking that Niski's just going to go on Azir and default into it. I think you're really priced in to take your AD carry here to get a S-tier Lux lane. You don't have to do it, but that does seem like AD carry Sivir into double ban is obvious. And they're going to do that, so. The Corki blind, when you have two further bans to ban mid laners, is actually a bit of a curious choice to me from Team Liquid. Does mean they have, like, godly team fight, right? Aatrox, Sejuani, Corki. But on the blue side, TL haven't flexed anything. Like, it will be Sejuani jungle, Aatrox top. Aatrox is a power pick for impact. He's played it well this season, but I don't feel like any wins were gotten on the Team Liquid side for certain. And it kind of doesn't help their ban phase to be as robust here because a lot of people are willing to take the Azir side of the skill matchup in mid lane. Meanwhile, Trundle into Sejuani, at least on paper, is good. Sivir Lux, with the chance to ban two bot laners, is like insane. So I find this really peculiar. This is kind of a, we're better than the enemy team, so we're just going to draft good champions. Whereas this seems pretty heads up from C9 side, and we get the confirmation that Kumo will be playing the Jace here. So he's got a priority matchup into Aatrox. Like, that part is good. Lucian has a really good laning matchup into Sivir. So I think that, for example, Lucian Yuumi, the bullet hell lane as we call it in Korea, is really strong into Sivir Lux. I like that lane matchup, even though Lux is one of the best supports into Yuumi. But the Braum means that the windows to punish are more minimal. And here we go. What do you want to pick into the Corki? I didn't know this is a Veigar game again. All right. So we get Veigar. We had our Veigar last week on the stream where I was unconvinced on Veigar, but in the end it proved to be a really good pick in Rift Rivals. That was Nemesis who played the Veigar. The theory behind Veigar here is really interesting. On the one hand, the Veigar is a classic Cloud9 pick. When I think of Cloud9 internationally, I think of Week 1, Worlds 2015, Tristana, Veigar comps. They love to play Tristana Veigar. I've only seen the results. I knew Kumo played Jace. I knew they won. I haven't watched the game. Veigar, compositionally for a fast push, which is what those Veigar Tristana comps at Worlds were, is really powerful because you put the cage next to the turret. It eats most of the lane. You can't walk through it. You can't stay in it because you're afraid of follow-up damage. And therefore, you siege stronger. And Sivir is an AD carry that, It was Sana Azir, wasn't? No, it was a Veigar comps, for what I'm remembering from Worlds 2015. Now, it's possible it was a different AD carry with Veigar. I do remember Veigar Trist, though, at least once. But Veigar here, while the matchup isn't good into Corki, it's really insane versus Aatrox and Lucian in fights. Impossible to fight into it. Thank you, Broken Shard, for the shout out here. In lane, it's not that awful, right? Because Corki's lane presence pre-6 is pretty minimal, and Veigar can just, you know, either farm or do the standard, get one Q proc and harass at the same time. And remember, if you just last hit, but you use all your Q for harass, and Corki doesn't have the longest range on his Q, you do still get stacks of your, you know, free ability power passive, because it works for support Veigar, the same for mid Veigar, and the harassment on enemy champions does pretty well. It's obviously not a priority lane, but it's one that works with gank assist in that Corki's pretty squishy and doesn't really want to buy Hex Drinker at any point. And for Siege and team fights, like you mentioned, it's pretty crazy. So I actually really like it in this game, because you can go cleanse or teleport as you want. It's not a counter pick for a lane, but you have strong lanes around it, so Veigar's less likely to be another kind of losing point for you. And then when it comes to Sieges especially, you have Sivir who does turret damage but can't cancel auto with Ricochet that much because of a 500 range. Suddenly, the cage means that Lucian, Corki, Aatrox can't just walk up from behind the turret and contest a short-range AD carry. Therefore, your Siege goes from being turret damage but no range to actually getting the turret damage off. Lux and Jace have insane Siege here as well. If Cloud9 get a leader, and if they get a Baron especially, you'll notice there are casts I'm in where I talk about, all right, if they get the Baron, the minimum you should expect is either them getting 2 inhibitors or ending the game. Sometimes you get a Baron and you just farm, right? We see that a lot of the time from teams from behind. If this Cloud9 comp gets a Baron, literally they just win the game almost. They should win the game with first Baron very easily, because what is the counterplay to a Trundle pillar and a cage under your turret? No one can walk past that. That's the exact width of the entire lane. There will be temporary terrain put up for like 6 seconds. There's nothing you can do to get through that apart from just massively all-inning over it or flank teleporting on it. So if you actually get Baron buff with this and your minions are already strong, with this much Baron damage and the level of siege and zone control you have, actually the most insane siege you could ever ask for. And while that's sometimes just siege down the mid lane turret, with Baron, it's just end the game. So I'm guessing that if there was a Baron this game, I know it's not that long a game, the Baron buff power play should be a huge one, like 4,500 gold or so in this particular game. People are calling it the donut comp. I get that one with punching a hole through the middle of a circle. It can also be making the kind of effective zoning control thicker, but the cage is already pretty thick, so that's with a K, not a C. So I really like the comp here from the side of Cloud9, and I feel like Team Liquid didn't really get anything that interacts with early game well. Like, they get a lot of things that, on their terms, with the right amount of items, can team fight very well, but team fights are only forceable by the Sejuani in terms of engage, or if you're already ahead. And there's so much power on the C9 side that assuming that TL can just get ahead because they're better players, I refuse to kind of speak about analysis like that. Like, this to me requires a pretty significant outplay from the jungler, or C9 just farming it out, not really using their comp very well, and then being surprised when 3-item Corki just smashes them. So I'm surprised here to see this sort of play. And the fact that they, took the Sejuani that was open, and TL took a lot of power picks that were open, C9 answered it super well. I'm just listening to, in 1.5 times speed, the Reaper interview here. Pretty standard stuff. They don't give away anything. Let's see what it all means, though. In terms of level 1, any information on Sejuani's pathing is obviously quite welcome, but the level 1 from TL is way stronger than the level 1 from C9. You don't want to skill E on the side of the Trundle. The Lux is good, but the Braum is better. Braum Lucian level 1, obviously super insane. So Trundle's going to go for a super safe clear. I'm happy my thoughts of Trundle jungle that I was telling Yankos about during the boot camp before MSI. I was like, Trundle jungle feels really good in the new jungle. Like with the new Cinderhulk, Trundle jungle is pretty powerful. And I know that we mostly see it just as a counterpick to Sejuani, but the champion works pretty well into Sej and Xin, which are two ends of the coin. So it's actually just a pretty good jungler overall. Listen to Reaper. All right, let's listen to him more clearly. The first part of it.
Rivals run and you're going against Team Liquid. It's your first match back. So what's the team thoughts coming into today?
Team feels really good right now, and we recover process from the last victory driver. But obviously, it's really tough to play against Team Liquid right after the recovery process. But we feel good, and I hope we can play well against Team Liquid right now.
With that, you also have Kumo coming in as a top lane sub for Licorice. So what can we expect to see from him?
I'm not worried about Kumo at all.
Ooh, not worried at all. Ripid, thank you. Best of luck to you. Back to you guys.
We are this one. I actually enjoyed the hell out of all chat already this game. Can you run down those who aren't pro you?
So no strategy talk there, but I like the confidence. I mean, Kumo comes in with a lot of seasoning, right? He hasn't been playing in challengers this split. I know they've been running jukes instead. So I imagine he's been scrimming more with the team or been around the team more if he's not going to be playing as many games with the challenger team. So given that, I don't find the confidence surprising. Reaper is really, really good about having confidence in his players. Like, he's one of those coaches that, like, is kind of a coach's coach, but also a player's coach, and that the players have always really respected him because of his accomplishments on the field. Like, he's kind of an infamous name without necessarily being a famous name because he, was in kind of a forgotten era long time ago. But also, he's inspirational. He's smart about the game. Like, he can answer all your questions, and he played previously before. So he also, the reason why I say player's coach also is that whenever he has kind of a player coming in, he's always super confident about that player on broadcast. And players love that. They want their coach to say, this guy's going to be great, ice in your veins kind of thing. All right, let's get through this pause. No, the pause is too long. Video games. How nervous does Kumo look? We didn't see him on screen. I don't know if we saw Kumo. Never mind. So, good priority matchup for the Jace top. One gank can really undo him. Just like the Yorick has the cage, the Infernal Chains is pretty frustrating for Jace to deal with most of the time. Phase Rush makes it a bit easier. Smithy and Svenskaren spot each other. This is kind of a new path we've seen quite a lot, and it makes sense for Trundle. He kills single target camps really easily. You get your level 3 that way. Skipping Raptors when you go Machete is not a huge surprise. I guess most top red side start junglers start Talisman, so I guess just playing towards Machete, it probably should just be your normal start of taking the Krugs because of the experience edge it gives you, then going for your second big buff. And this actually gets them double Scuttle. This is cool to see. So stuff like this fits into my expectation of C9 as a team, like how I've kind of built them on a kind of narrative high level. But also is the sort of stuff we didn't see from TSM in our reviews last week, is what happens here. Plays towards his jungle item, takes the blue buff, and comes down bot side for bot Scuttle. The moment they chase out the Sejuani from the jungle, they know Sejuani will go on to Krugs or recall at this point. So playing into that, if Sejuani is recalling, then Kumo might be lane gank, so you're free to go down and contest the Rift Scuttle. And if Sejuani, more likely, is onto her Krug camp, the Rift Scuttle is also free. So in either case of what Sejuani is doing with her time, you're under no threat here, and it's not even mid lane that had priority. So really good double Scuttle here, and that hurts the Sejuani, but gets more gold and onto the map from TL and even more precise respawn timings. And that's what we don't see enough from TSM, where TSM know what their champs do on paper, but don't actually pilot them to get lots of leads in the early game like they can. But we do see pretty consistently from C9 is, oh boy, how did this happen? Let's look at the minion wave spots. The minion wave's pretty mid lane here in the bot side. Minion wave's around the mid. Trade starts here, so you can see in the middle of the lane. This should never happen. So let's pause at the start here. Consider the scenario. This is not because of, say, a freeze being started here or here, and therefore a brawl needing to happen to reset a map. This is middle of the lane. Pure middle of the lane is where this is happening. And Sneaky also has heal for lane. If you have heal for lane, then you should never die 2v2 with a combat summoner advantage the middle of the lane for no reason. But that's what happens here. So the E is misused here, so he doesn't actually manage to repel anything. It just gets all in, and he also heals pretty late as well. Is the ignite first or the heal first? I didn't catch it. Yeah, the ignite was before the heal as well, and the E was late. So that's a double mistake in the 2v2. They salvage a kill, so that part is good. But remember, the kill is still more punishing onto Sneaky because he has a combat summoner and doesn't have TP. So that was a really kind of strange death. There's quite a lot of avoidable mistakes. Zeyzal could have held on to his binding for longer. We get the longer replay here. How does he get this Q? Damn, that Q was kind of out of nowhere there by Core JJ. The Q there is pretty big. CC used onto Core JJ means that Double Lift gets to just all in on this one. The minion aggro and the Lux general damage does mean there's a trade kill overall. So Double Lift does die. He's actually in two minds at the end. It's a nice salvage kill from Zeyzal, but the first kill is more punishing onto the bot laner of C9 and just shouldn't have happened. When you have a combat spell advantage, going 1v1 for 1 there really isn't okay. Look at the wave position after the kill. Lucian is like 2 waves ahead without using TP after that. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, this was a pretty significant misplay from a really strong duo lane. Like, I would assume this C9 lane would be at least 1 turret played ahead. Not the standard 2 for Lux, because Lucian actually is really strong into Sivir early. But 1 or 2 minimum is kind of what you would expect there, and we don't get that here. Niski went Unsealed Spellbook. It's always been a champion that gravitated towards Unsealed Spellbook are champions like Veigar. The only time I've seen I remember Veigar in meta as... The only time Veigar's been in meta during the last couple of years, there was a patch where Abyssal Mask Protobelt Veigar was meta. The tankier Veigar build was meta for a little bit, then fell away. I believe Pawn played it in the LCK. It was played in solo queue quite a bit. The Glacial Augment build we really liked from Nemesis last week because the Twin Shadows plus Cage had just so much pressure on its own. In this case, I guess Spellbook is to allow for a cleanse to, if you're camped by Smithy. You lose out on the really cool Twin Shadows interaction, but I don't think it's that costly overall. So map pressure is not huge. Like, Impact actually is getting deep wards down, but they're spotted by Svenskeren. No Drake being picked up. In a scaling game to ultra late game, you have to like TL's comp because C9 have no frontline other than a Trundle, and Corki Lucian is so much poke damage, and then Aatrox the teamfight damage later. So I think they have a pretty significant lead there. So we're waiting for C9 to actually show us when they're going to turn it on. Smithy actually stealing blue because of the topside reveal on the Trundle. So let's watch the map here because this is very interesting. Trundle spotted topside as blue spawns, and then Sejuani walks on a ward to invade. That part all makes sense. Now, is package still up? Package, Jensen hasn't got the package, which is something to note here. We're after 8 minutes, so package would have been big on a map movement here. TL have first rotation also, so that's why they walk up as the ping is on the mini map to come and join. Control ward not scouted, so I don't believe Smithy knew. I don't believe he paths into the brush because there is no blue ping on the control ward. Maybe it doesn't matter because the Trundle was seen topside. But Trundle walks all the way down, and we get the contest here. I wonder if this was unintentional. I assume the Lux blast plant was unintentional. Or was it double lift? I can't tell. Let's watch it. Okay, so double lift is the one to knock away. But the binding does register, ends up being pretty important. And you get some of the stun situations we talked about. Spot from Niski is good. The flash cage here, right? Flash cage. After the first stun comes in. Perma CC, instant death. Really nice punishment from C9 on that one. So Jensen can't poke out Niski on the top side. And because Sejuani is taken down so easily here, actually Jensen gets to do nothing. This is the point in the game where early items, I actually prefer C9 in skirmishes unless double lift can open up. But double lift doesn't really have a lot of AD and isn't really involved in the fight. So I actually just get to keep chasing. The chase here is so big from C9. Veigar. It's cool to see a Veigar meta. Yes, the Smithy flash wasn't fantastic. Good call from C9. It was a play from TL that makes sense. Topside, revealed jungler, contest their blue buff, just get in there, get out, we have priority bot lane. But C9 also make a super decisive call to stay on it. And then there's just no way out, right, for Smithy. Jensen can't do anything. Double lift also is zoning. And it was just a total flash in place. Like I was trying to work out where the flash was. I only saw it be used. But just can't get anything out of the flash. Let's watch for the flash. Yeah, it's used there as the binding comes in. So it gets no value out of flash at all. Double lift had autoed the the Lux out of the fight, but it didn't matter. And Niski was super, super on in terms of flashing in with the cage. So good play from them there. Good call from TL. This is the sort of stuff that TL was doing well against G2 early game, is even when G2 was getting ganks in the mid lane, they were always pretty smart at reading the map and saying, okay, where can we get some freebies? The Drake, since you know there's going to be an entire reset from C9, is going to be free. And yeah, a good call in chat by Mathoda. The most important movement is Niski giving away priority. He accepts the lane being pushed in to get there first, and all right. It's going to be a return to the Protobelt build. Jensen, why are we using W here? I guess that's game knowledge. I would think everyone would know that Corki doesn't go through. I guess he just thought he was hard trading, because he goes in with the package thinking he's hard trading, and then I guess underrates how fast the cage arms. Smithy's ult there. He assumes he's going back, but with how fast his ally dies, he ain't going back. That's another big moment for Cena. They're going to get turret plates in mid lane. Trundle alone is a turret plate destroyer because they rebuff the Q to apply to turrets again. Yeah, I mean, maybe you thought the cooldown was down. That's a good call from chat. But I think the moment you see it arm, you have to flash there. Because he opened with a super aggressive trade. He opens packaging into a minion wave. But I don't know why E would be down, right? Like, I think he has to know the cooldown is up. I guess he thinks it's going to arm a half second later, but it's just a solo kill. Not even a close one. And C9 have been able to get vision control bot side in order to spot in that area. They haven't gotten anything out of top, but it's just been farm for farm, which is fine for Kumo. If the map ever becomes C9 dominated, it's almost impossible for TL to do anything other than hard team fight because the short range champion is going to be so heavily punished. This is a cool play. So this is the kind of Season 8 special turret dive the enemy with a top lane TP play that comes in. They don't know Svenskaren's bot side, and they hope that they can just be assertive enough to kill them 5v2 because they're sending everyone for this play. Sven is already ahead of the play. Let's watch Sven's pathing and how he gets here. Sven goes bot side, full clears it, and then sits in the brush, waiting for a play like this. The moment that he sees the mini-map, I'll point to it here, the moment that he sees Sejuani come in, he's there for the counter gank and kind of predicting that a play like this could happen. Very veteran jungle call from Sven on the bottom side. TL just think, even if he's there, let's get 5 people there before the enemy can. Kumo can't TP, and Niski just went mid lane. So they assume they're going to hard outnumber. But C9 read this really well, and that means a huge lead top side. Like, TL actually have to still dive this. They sent so many people here. Impact knows. Impact's like, I'm going to lose almost all of my turret. Please, please, we need to dive it. Actually, you lose an insane amount from this play. Wow. Niski's just styling on him. Proto belts to the side. Let's look at the gold when this play starts. When does this play start? When this play starts, it's 600 gold between the teams, right? The moment you commit to this and don't fight, you lose so much gold. Like, TL are so desperate. It's very easy for Niski to play mid lane here because you push the wave and you know that the enemy team is going to be desperate to gank you because you feel like you have to salvage. Get away from flash ult with just a proto belt. Smithy doesn't have ult this whole time. Like, it's already, if you look at this, like, it's already going to be now with no action happening in what? 30 seconds, the game went from a 500 gold lead to a 1,200 gold lead. Like, you lost 700 here. The moment that Impact TP's down against a priority laner like Jace, who has minion wave frozen, he had no priority to make that TP. You almost have to dive it, even if it looks like a dumb dive 5v3, because you lose so much on the map. And TL is trying to stay grouped to take things, but C9 is a step ahead of them here. Like, this sort of desperation on a scaling comp is where you make stupid decisions. Let's see how much they want to stay on this. They're going to get 5 members there first. Ugh, that was a yucky flash. Yikes. This is a yikes fight, for sure. I had to watch it play out. So the whole passage is super desperate from TL. Moments like this, I'll slow down so I can talk about it, where they tried the dive, Impact's like, no, I have to make this work, proxy the wave, they back away, they go mid lane, try to make a flash play, it doesn't work, they try to initiate with a Braum. Let's try the Rift Herald against Jace poke with C9 being fully aware. These are very much a chase the loss decision. You guys remember kind of Caps in the G2 versus Fnatic series, camping everywhere to try to make plays happen. I'm actually talking about Caps against TL even last week, right? Where he was desperately trying to make plays happen way behind is LeBlanc. Chasing the loss is a real thing that happens in the pro game because you know how much you're losing your lanes making TPs without priority. But also, when you have scaling like this, they're less needed. Like, G2 had to chase for kills with the LeBlanc last week. TL on replay here, when they're watching over this play, will be reminded, wait, we had scaling teamfight in this game. We have a huge lead in terms of mid to late game comp because our comp is super standard. We can play front to back. We have a teamfight comp. And they, in this last minute, since they sent down the TP, are down 2,300 gold plus the Rift Herald summon pre-14 minutes. And actually the game can just be lost there against a comp like C9. C9's comp is so punishing with Rift Herald or Baron. We already talked about how godly he is at Siege. All from making a TP play down bot lane that Svenskeren was there to counter gank on. TL have kind of spilled their tea a couple of times when they had the late game comp. Like, this is a really, really poor situation. Chat's asking about, does TL scale better than C9? Absolutely, I think the answer is yes, because as the game goes on, like, yes, you have struggles against Veigar, but the moment you have Aatrox, Sejuani, 280 carries, and a Braum versus no melee champion to face check other than your jungler, no tank other than your jungler, it is so much harder for C9 to play out the game because getting the team fight you want, you need to be ahead to make it happen. With unlimited items, I think frontliners will always beat kind of more conditional comps like C9, and Veigar is too single target in order to punish enough, so the ease at which TL can team fight 4 to 5 items puts me thinking they have a pretty significant scaling edge. I know other people will look at Veigar and Sivir and say, but they're, you know, huge damage threats, and I think you're not wrong about that, but I personally believe TL have a really big scaling advantage here, and that they hurried themselves in a game that they didn't need to at all. Like, at the end of the day, like, there are ways that C9 in the late game can win the game, largely around kind of Jace split push pressure, because Aatrox never really gets the ability to chase down and kill a Jace. But overall, I look at TL as having, yes, a significantly easier teamfight comp, and thus, with that being considered, TL, before that even happens, is, all right, we're seeing a cool play here. Oh, what a dunking. Let's watch this trade again. This is a good one. Yeah, 2,500 gold odd was gained. So Impact walks up. He has a flash advantage, and when he hits the first Q, I guess he's fancying the kill. I like this. So the first Q out of sweet spot is really cool. Because I'll watch the sweet spots, right? Sweet spot. Q's out of the sweet spot and then hits him in without flash up. Why doesn't Impact flash here? So the Q here is actually the high skill moment from the Jace because he Q's over the sweet spot. But then Impact should have flashed onto Kumo there and would have killed him. So Impact actually gets heavily outskilled in the 1v1. That was really easy. That was a really huge outskill. Like, that's kind of a moment where I look at it and I'm like, I'm listening to the NA casters telling me that Impact's been performing, like, just been hard carrying in lane, and I've seen better performances from him, but I think that's actually a really bad look to not flash there as Impact. The Q over the sweet spot is actually super good, but why doesn't Impact flash? I don't know. That was definitely kind of what I would expect. Kind of mistake from Impact rather than Impact's superpowered moment. But they've been watching him closer, so I defer to the NA casters. But I look at that and I'm like, I don't know. Impact overrated? No, I think Impact's been underrated for a long time by the Western fans. I think he's still had a way better domestic split than normal, but I don't think he's a laning player, you know? Like, that's why I'll always pick Licorice over Impact, is that I never can assume Impact will make the 1v1 in the solo lane that should happen based on his matchup, but I can assume that with Licorice more often than not. Oh, Svenskaren's in trouble. He thinks he has priority, but they have no advanced vision to make this play. I don't think he's underrated internationally, Impact. I think a lot of kind of NALCS viewers have always rated Impact very highly because he's just a reliable player. Like, I think Korean players have a lot of great things to say about Impact more often than not. The only person I can remember shit-talking him is Someday, I think, way back when, around like 2016 Worlds or something. I know Impact also had no love lost there either. But usually, I think Korean pros have had great respect for Impact as a player, but just not as a win lane player. Shouldn't Sneaky have changed his trinket by now for exactly that sort of thing? Fair point. It is a bit strange to see Warding Trinket. Now, Warding Trinket helps with their pick CC, so it's possible that it was an intentional keep of the Warding Trinket, but how many times has he shopped since he hit level 9? It's possible that he hasn't shopped. When did he hit level 9? Yeah, he hasn't shopped. That's why no trinket change. So this is one of those weird spots where, as a jungler, from his perspective, like when he makes this play, he has a control ward bot side, he has a control ward top side, and he has his bot lane as Veigar and Sivir grouped up. Like, he assumes they have priority here on this Scuttle Crab, because in some ways they do. But TL actually walks down, makes a pretty smart map read, and gets a kill. And that's a very veteran call from TL to get the collapse onto Impact there. Sorry, onto Svenskeren there. I don't think it's a stupid move by Svenskeren. I think in many normal cases you do have enough priority to make that play, but it's a really good play by TL to read the way the map ebbs and flows with minion waves and the positioning in which C9 were on. Low mana on Niski, low mana on Sneaky. That was a good play. And he gets some top lane turret as well. So if we're going to call out TL's kind of all-in on the bot side that was scouted out, we should compliment them for a good map read there. No tank build on Niski like the pawn build I'm talking about before, but a lot of people open with Protobelt now if they're not going to be going down the Glacial Augment route. It's not quite the old DFG days of adding another nuke on a champion with infinite AP scaling, but he's got 420 AP, so he's got that going for him. Whoop. For an old wrestling reference, for the benefit of those with flash photography, I will hover over the 420 AP on good old Veigar. If you know the reference, you know the reference. But yeah, Niski just free APing here. Like we mentioned, no Hex Drinker in the build yet from Corki. You really want to go for the benefit of 20% CDR where possible, but let's zoom in on the play here. So how does this start? TL roaming down, C9 just rushing down the river. So TL actually controls river vision. This is another one of those plays. Like, to me, plays like this actually embody the differences between T9 and CL as teams. Like, C9 are really good at playing around strong laners. But when it comes to map plays, they sometimes make some weird decisions mid to late game. Like, Kumo chases in here because he knows his team is backing him up, but they have no idea about where the enemy is, and the enemy has hard crowd control out the wazoo. And they made this play against Package. Like, this is a really poor map rotation from C9, thinking they can be competitive and fighting here. And the call for Kumo, like, there should have been a call for Kumo to back off, because TL will always get there first, and with TP invested as well. Like, they have the map rotation advantage and a lot of ults to punish the Jace chasing in. So that was a pretty weird C9 thought they had priority there, and while you can kind of understand Svenskeren being caught without priority in mid lane, because that was a nuanced thing, like, to me, this is pretty clear. Like, you see Corki, like, they saw Corki in vision on the top side with package. Sejuani, if he's chasing there, and the Braum was also wave clearing, so definitely misread the map here, did C9. And it's closed the gold lead. It's down to 1,200 now after being 2,500 from TL's mistakes. So a couple of mistakes from both sides. And if you pause the game at 20, which is, you know, usually the point where we open up discussions about where the game's at, where the game's going, etc. If you pause the game here with the gold gap starting to come back and TL making some good map movements, I think Occam's razor is that TL isn't too far behind to fall away, and that C9 kind of needs that 20 to 26 minute Baron. Otherwise, TL will drag it late, have 3 face checkers, the Braum to put up the shield, the Sejuani as a super tank, and even the Aatrox situationally to place down vision and grind out a victory. Like, I was looking at this as like it's going to be one of those TL grind out victories that we see. The game time would have been about 37 minutes. TL won after C9 made a couple more mistakes, but we know that's not where the game goes. So how C9 find a way back into this game is going to be really interesting. Caged grows a flash. We know exactly how strong this siege is. I believe during Protobelt you can buffer cast the E. Maybe someone can confirm that, but given that you can Protobelt E flash on Gragas, and I believe you can E Protobelt then flash on Gragas as well, I believe you can Protobelt cast E on Veigar, and that's one of the sieging moments that's really big. You can't flash during Protobelt, but I believe you can use spells. Wait, Smithy uses flash how? He wasn't stunned, so he flashed over the stun. When he was trying to path into mid lane, Veigar caught him. So C9 have that priority bot side. They get the Drake. CS-wise, they're winning in 2 out of 3 lanes. Even the TPing down as Aatrox and losing out on minions for a long time hasn't cost the Aatrox, right? He's actually even in CS, so TL have just access to more minions because they've played the map a little bit smarter than C9. So when Impact and Jensen are spotted bot side, this play from Zeyzal and Svenskeren walking up is actually really cool. I love plays like this because they show why pro games can be so interesting. Let's talk about this play. This is one I think fans at home could learn from. Watch what happens on the bot side. Impact is revealed as Trundle and Lux are walking in, and they're like, okay, we're walking toward the tri-brush. They see Jensen here, and that means that TL can't have as many people defensively in the area, and that's exactly as Svenskeren and Zeyzal walk up to put up aggressive vision. A play like this that transitions from 2 people being spotted bot side, let's invade further into punishing Core JJ and taking him down, solo warding, is exactly the same sort of play that TL was trying to punish when they saw Trundle clearing the top lane Krugs, and then Sejuani tried to invade and steal the blue. It's all about the flow of vision, allowing you to be a bit more aggressive about how far down you can put down vision. As I just noticed that Pikachu donated 10 subs. Thank you very much to you. This is what the pro game is all about. When an extra variable catches you unawares a little bit, which is this variable, if you don't see Jensen here looking for the lane gank onto Kumo, these 2 people stay at the pixel brush. They don't push in further in order to contest aggressive vision. They've got the vision supremacy on the top side, but getting here is too scary because what if Jensen is there? What if Aatrox is there? What if you're outnumbered? And what did we talk about the draft coming through from C9? When the game gets later, and we're not really talking about 22 minutes, but we are talking about 26, 27, the problem for C9 is they can't check brush without having more people there. Braum can solo ward more often than not because he has Unbreakable Flash. He has the ability to taxi onto an ally with his stand beside me. Meanwhile, Trundle doesn't have the ability to check brush with Pillar anymore. Only Lux has the ability to check brush anymore of the C9 team. And everyone here except the Trundle is super squishy. And honestly, Trundle normally needs to ult someone like Sej in order to be tanky. So with no people that can face check to put down vision, it's very common that around this place, you never get vision in the enemy jungle to set up a safe siege because someone is always at threat of dying walking in to put vision. But seeing two people, suddenly a Lux plus Trundle invasion duo isn't at risk of being outnumbered and can take more liberties warding. So the lane ward from Kumo here is what allows for this play to happen. Zeyzal face-checked first as a squishy melee support, knowing that there's no way they were going to be outnumbered. Nisqy knows they can flash because the counterplay here is not going to be two people walking in. Really nice play around vision from C9, which had been TL's kind of bread and butter so far in this game, but is one of those high-level kind of macro plays that I see, especially North American teams in the mid-game, sometimes miss. So it's nice to see C9 make the right read there. So now it's 5v4. CoreJJ is going to take a long time to rejoin. Sneaky's going to get to push in a wave, get priority over the Baron area. The flow-on effect of this is much more than just a single kill. Chase of this comp, man. Sivir ult pop just to catch somebody. They know that Sejuani's flash is down. They first interrupt impact and then the binding enough to get a kill. Like stuff like this is so awkward. Bomb is just coming back from base. As TL, you desperately want to get even vision down. Around here, enemies here, look for a team fight. Sejuani catches someone, you try to get the kill. They're pretty squishy. That's the way that TL's comp functions. But if they're playing through an area where they had no priority, remember Jace was doing well on the bot side, getting caught is very real. And C9 don't have Twin Shadows on Veigar, but in a different game they would. They still have Sivir ult plus Lux Trundle Veigar. That's so many different ways to slow and acquire targets. And it's another time TL can't put together a team fight before they want to. They want 2 items on everyone minimum and then a good, honest 5v5. Instead, they have less than 2 items on 2 of their carries, and they're just getting picked on the way to team fights again and again. So C9 have been really smart here about punishing. They're using tools regularly because things like Sivir ult doesn't have a punishing, cooldown window. It's got a pretty short cooldown after you use it. Doublelift's playing the side lane, and his TP is down. And C9's siege is unbelievable, right? Siege continues. They clear the minion wave. That's pretty well done by TL. Point in chat that perhaps using the ult earlier would have been smart. So Doublelift's push here is fine because he can't wave clear enough to make things happen. Why is he still there? So Doublelift takes the turret now. Why does he push the minion wave? Like, Doublelift could have backed off the turret, started teleporting now, and he would have gotten out. It's so greedy for caster minions. Because if he starts now, let's do timers. When do you start TPing? When do you start going away? Let's check the timer in the game. All right, I think now you know that you're definitely going to get the turret. So you walk over to the brush, that takes 1 second, and then 8 seconds for recall. So you're out at 24:28. Also, your teleport will come up potentially halfway through that. Nope, it's about the same. So teleporting out, not that important. Let's see if he would have lived if he got out at 24:28. 24-28 is now. So Double Lift could have gotten out before Lux got there. Lux gets there at 24-30. So Double Lift being greedy for caster minions, he would have still got local gold. The minions would have killed the turret. It's a really poor map read from Double Lift. Because it's another one of these, like, teleports being used. Yes, I guessed we can contest it, but we lose all priority on the bot side to get there. Like, it's not that Double Lift dies. It's that he forces suboptimal use of so many things, his flash, a TP as well, to make that play happen. If he has flash, he probably gets the kill there too. Yeah. Weird to see. I really like the Black Cleaver build returning here. I'm sure a lot of people are wondering why this isn't Black Cleaver, Essence Reaver into, say, IE or Zeal item. You have enough physical damage from the Aatrox and, you know, Corki's side of the physical damage, obviously mostly a magic damage champion, that when you have double 80 carry, I actually prefer the Lucian going for a lower budget 2-item build turn on earlier and let Jensen do the real scaling as a 100% crit Corki. So I'm a big fan of going the Black Cleaver build this game. Good map awareness from Kumo to see the TP coming in early enough in the fog of war to know to back away. How does this play start? Where was Aatrox last seen? Aatrox seen bot side roaming up. His TP is down, so you know he's not in position for a TP flank, and he's not in front of you as a frontliner. So the obvious question is, where is Impact at? And it's cool that C9 actually think about that, because they pop ulti here to look for a target, and then someone makes the call, wait, where is Aatrox? They check the brush here, and then they catch Impact, who kind of understands the gig is too late. The gig is up too late. I think C9 problem solved this pretty well. The ult trying to find a pick into turning and checking brush. The dark matter over the wall is actually to spot for Aatrox, not to kill the Raptors. And then they get to kill Impact. So I don't think Impact did anything particularly wrong here. You could argue he should have backed off a little bit earlier, but I think C9 does a lot more problem solving than you thought when it comes to popping the Sivir ult. Like, not normally when you Sivir ult do you instantly disengage, turn, and then try to find an Aatrox. But TL thought about the Aatrox, which I think is increasingly important. Wow. EQ hits. Kumo's job. He sees Jensen on a ward. This is nice. Even though he doesn't hit the Q, Kumo plays that nice and aggressive. There's a player who is not a rookie. This is not a rookie play. Really nicely done. Well played. And now it's Baron Cloud9, which we already said should basically be a game ender. Like, this team with Baron is among the most disgusting things ever. Well. Yep, games are easy when you pick a comp like this and get Baron. That was a cool game. Both teams made mistakes, which, coming off Rift Rivals, I guess is fine. My big surprise on the TL side is more... I mean, do I have big mistakes on the TL side? I think double lift greeting for minions is probably like something that I haven't seen from his game in a while. I think that was a little bit off. The vision plays from C9, I guess as a caster, your standard thing to do is to glorify the team that won and then play, like, you know, lightly criticize the team that lost, but like shine your light on the positives, right? But on this VOD review, you know, I'm always very clear about the teams that played bad. I think it was surprising how good C9 played. Part of that is because they didn't really get to play last week. with their full roster. Part of that's because they have a sub top. But the adjustments in macro plays, like the shot calling was so much clearer in this game than it was in previous games. And my guess would be that without Licorice in the lineup and with Kumo probably coming in and not saying much, I think the calls were clear and listened to here. Also, I've reviewed some Blabber games, right? And you kind of give Sven the information edge over Blabber when it comes to comms. C9 felt really razor sharp. Trundle revealed on top side. Sejuani goes to counter invade on the bot side. Make a smart, decisive play. Good job. You see 2 members on the lane gank onto Kumo on the bot side. Lux and Trundle walk in, invade. Good job. I thought Sven plus Zazel were on really good form in this game when it came to punishing macro areas where their vision gave them pretty big leads. And some of the members of TL made some mistakes, but it's good to see this C9 because I think largely this C9 has been absent so far this season. Like, it's cool to see C9 aggressive in the early game based on information where they feel like they can trade up, knowing what their comp is strong at, which is getting picks and sieging in the early to mid. And TL's, the big criticism to me outside of individual misplays is, my opinion is they had a lot of scaling in this draft. Like, I look at that as an easy to execute draft post 30 minutes. And they overforced really hard, overforcing. They deep teleport to bot side. Ah, crap, Trundle saw this coming. Whatever. You could back away there, lose a couple of turret plates, be 600 gold down, and that's fine. Instead, they stayed a little bit too long bot lane and then made a play mid lane, like flash ult play with Braum. Nice protobelt away from the Veigar into then hard forcing at the Rift Herald. Like, one hard force with TP with a draft like that is fine. But if you hard force, and then lose before your comp is truly online, there was no 3-item Lucian or 3-item Corki this game. Like, I think then it's just an issue of hard forcing, right? Like, it felt like when they wanted things, they were too dogged around it, whether it was those 3 attempts to fight or Doublelift just being too slow on the push and top side. So after being kind of North America's really impressive team at Rift Rivals, this was a really poor game from Team Liquid. But I also want to shout out how much things look like kind of Cloud9 at their best, even though it wasn't Licorice in the lineup. Like, to me, I've been down on Licorice this split, and we got some evidence as to why with his medical conditions. Kumo came in and, bless his heart, like, didn't skip a beat. Loved the aggressive capitalization on that kill on Corki. It's one of the reasons the game ended so decisively at 27 minutes. But it looked like a Cloud9 in sync, and my guess is that shot calling was significantly different this game than it would have been in other games. So if you're on a Reaper stream and you want to, like, clip out, get an answer from him, if I get a chance, I'll ask him. I want to know what the comms were different between this Sven jungle game compared to maybe with Licorice in the lineup. It's not to call out Licorice, but sometimes with one less voice, things just become clearer. So this was really clean from the side of Cloud9. So impressive victory for them. Well, that'll do it for our first VOD review of the night. So if you are only here for the LCS portion, we'll be wrapping that up here. I'm going to take a quick break, going to eat a bit of dinner because I'm getting hungry. And we got some Rift Rivals awesomeness to review. It's Kingzone IG for that big Kingzone victory to open the last day of the tournament into Dam1's Debutante Ball. We'll start that after the break. So thank you very much for watching the first review of the night. I'll be back to answer some questions after a little bit of dinner. So about a 5-minute break here. I'll play some ads and be right back.